Joining us in studio now is Kevin Picu, the Executive Director and Principal Attorney of the Southwest Detroit Immigration and Refugee Center. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And also joining us via Zoom is former State Representative Tom Barrett. And Tom, we'll start with you. I know you just traveled to the southern border. Did you see anything there like this?
So I didn't see any of the buoys that you're referencing in your story, but I did see just a tremendous amount of porous and risk at the border, porous nature of people being able to enter our country without lawful reason to. I was down at McAllen, which is a very busy border crossing area. There's a certain amount of physical structure that has been completed there, but unfortunately, a lot of those structures don't connect with one another. So it allows people to simply walk between them, enter our country illegally, and we're all seeing the effects of that nationwide, what those risks look like, and how we can stop them going forward.
Now, Kevin, are the barriers that they have in place legal?
They probably are not. I mean, we just heard from the story that there was no permits to allow Texas to do this. I think there are probably much better ways, more humane ways, if we really want to try to prevent or stop illegal immigration. I would not recommend this. This doesn't seem humane, and it doesn't seem legal either.
So how could you stop people from coming in who are not legal to come in?
Sure. I mean, the pull factors are overwhelming. The United States is the greatest country in the world. Millions of people, 100 million people worldwide are displaced. And for the millions of people who can't work, live in unstable governments, the attraction of the United States is overwhelming. So the idea of people coming to the nation that subscribes to liberty and opportunity, people will want to come. The question is, can we create an orderly process so people aren't forced to go through a river, climb over barriers, or concertina wire? That's inhumane. I don't think anybody wants that.
Tom, what do you think for how we can stop people from coming in illegally without having to go to these measures?
We have to simply set up a way in which it is a deterrent for people to illegally enter our country. It's unfair to expect that as Americans or as a state like Texas, that we would just stand down and not, put up resistance to people entering our country illegally. When I was at the border just a few weeks ago, they were telling us about the number of people that have crossed illegally, the drugs that have come into our country. I stood 100 feet from the trails used by the cartel to approach our side of the border and wade across. There was a discarded raft in the water, 25 feet away from where I was standing. I talked to a business owner there on the border who runs a water pumping facility in McAllen, Texas, to help service the water needs of the community there, who said that if they have a pump fail in the middle of the night and his workers have to go diagnose it, they are often confronted with cartel members who are unloading drugs on his side of the border there. We can't allow that to happen. So we have to have physical barriers that prevent illegal drugs and, unfortunately, illegal entry by people who don't have a legal process or a legal means to come into our country. It doesn't mean that we aren't a welcoming nation. We allow more immigrants than just about any other country on earth already. We've already had millions of people enter our country illegally under the Biden administration. We have to stop that flow from coming. Fentanyl coming across our border now represents the leading cause of death of Americans my age in our country, over 100 per year due to fentanyl, which is directly coming across our border because they've been enabled by the Biden administration to do that.
I can already hear you have some reaction.
Well, the people that we saw crossing the border, I didn't see any of them with fentanyl. And I think to conflate these two ideas, that people coming in
Do you deny
illegally,
that fentanyl is coming across our border?
I am so grateful that we have law enforcement who are working tirelessly to stop fentanyl. I don't want fentanyl coming in.
I don't either.
I don't think the Biden administration wants it. I am not here to promote the Biden administration, but I think to talk about these people who are desperate because they're leaving their homes because they don't have a place to work, they don't have a place, they can't feed their families, and to talk about fentanyl traffickers in the same, I think you're conflating two issues. I think we need to pour every resource we can to stop illegal drug trafficking. And I think to say that these immigrants who are getting caught up in these barriers are fentanyl traffickers, these are two completely different things.
Tom?
So we should just let people in if they promise they're not carrying fentanyl. That's the answer to the problem.
So that
if people
doesn't
are coming
happen.
here for economic reasons, if people are coming here for economic reasons, we should allow them entry into our country in unlimited numbers. But if we suspect they're trafficking fentanyl, we don't allow them in. I spoke to a border chief, a sector chief of one of the border regions just recently, and he said that Mexican nationals, those that are likely being profiled in your story just before we came on, actually are very low on the list of nationalities of countries of origin for people entering our country. He said they had a rush of Chinese nationals coming into the United States. There have been Afghan nationals, Russians, those certainly that have, insincere intent coming to our country. We've had more people on the terror watch list apprehended at our border than any time in history. Now, the Biden administration will tell you that means the system is working, that they're catching more people that way, when in reality, we know the gotaways, those that we have had no control over whatsoever, but we know they entered our country, are also at a historic high. So while we are catching a few more terrorists, we are also knowing that many more are getting away without our knowledge and without our awareness of where they are going or what their intentions are when they come into our country. It is preposterous to assume that we could simply allow people into our country who are economic refugees by leaving the door open and not expect that fentanyl and other traffickers are going to also exploit that same vulnerability and come into our country.
We're going to continue this conversation. I'll give you a chance to respond. And don't go away, Tom. We will continue this right after our break. Stay with us.
I don't know if there's been a better time to start a brand new news operation.
The newsroom was pretty much starting from scratch.
It's fresh, it's innovative.
Lots of energy, lots of passionate reporters.
Knowing what we're starting here puts so much joy in my heart.
We have reporters who are embedded in these communities.
Many people throughout St. Clair Shores have been fighting to save this water tower. If there's a miracle out there, get a hold of me.
We are part of the neighborhood. Our newsroom is part of your neighborhood.
Residents here on Stansbury say they are fed up with all this flooding that keeps happening.
Because look, it was like to the middle of the block. Now it's coming all the way to the end of the block.
We shouldn't have to live like this.
Telling the stories that otherwise nobody would know about.
Now, AJ, you went to the downtown boxing gym and you really got to see how this gym is impacting kids' lives.
Yeah, Chris, as soon as I walked in the building, it was very uplifting.
It's a boxing gym, but it's more than boxing. We do homework. We help them with the SAT.
When it comes to the weather, it's forecasting what's going to fall on your driveway, when is it going to happen, and how might it actually affect your day-to-day life.
Hundreds of people continue to call in reporting problems throughout the county.
Cleanup crews working all throughout Metro Detroit.
Get them down and get them cleaned up.
Local news to me means we're in your community, we're telling stories that matter to you, that affect you, that maybe we can get change and things done in your community.
Well, we're rethinking the way local news is done in the 21st century and how to tell the most important stories in a compelling way.
Local news is all about letting people know what's happening in their community.
I think we're here to listen and actually hear what you're saying, and we're putting together a newscast that will show that.
I want to tell those people's stories because it's needed. Detroit is ready. Get ready, because here we come.
Reporting in Dearborn Heights.
Live in Wayne County.
Reporting in Adrian.
Live in Livonia.
Reporting from South Lyon, Kelly Vaughn.
CBS News Detroit.
You're watching CBS News Detroit.
Welcome back. Kevin and Tom are still with us. We are talking about migrants coming into the country. And Kevin, I know that you wanted to say something, but we had to go to break, so
sure.
Please.
Yeah, I think it's important to say we don't support, at least I don't support the idea of just unfettered entrance, just because someone has an economic desire to come here, that they should just open the door and be allowed to come in. There is an orderly process. Everyone who comes to the United States goes through a vetting process. They have to apply, they go through background checks. So even if they're an economic refugee, to be able to stay here, there is a process. And I think to say we shouldn't have a process is certainly not my position, and I wouldn't support that.
So how would you then, for those people who, I would say that's bypassing the process to go through the water and come in illegally, how do we manage that?
Well, one thing that does need to happen is there are a lot of employers who like to take advantage of cheap labor. if we actually crack down on employers who use this labor because they know they can pay substandard wages, we could do a lot to discourage people from coming. Because if they had no way to work, then of course they wouldn't just come for an economic motive. So I think, again, they don't just, they're looking for jobs. People are giving them jobs, many of them illegal. And if we crack down on those who illegally employ people who are not entitled to work, that would go a long way to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm. Would that, though, Tom, do you think create another type of problem for us?
Well, I think that we absolutely need to hold those accountable who are breaking the law on the other side of the equation, those that are providing an economic magnet to bring people into the country illegally. If those businesses or others are doing that, employers, we absolutely ought to hold them accountable because that's illegal, and we ought to enforce the law that way as well. But to suggest that, everybody coming here is vetted and everything else, well, we know that's not true. We had hundreds of thousands, if not millions now, of illegal entries into the country. And beyond that, the greatest likelihood of a person being in the country illegally is someone who has overstayed their visa. So they entered the country under legal circumstances through a visa and then overstayed that visa, sometimes by months or even years, and stayed here in an illegal capacity. So while they may have had an access for 30 or 60 days on a visa, if they overstay for years at a time and go on to work here in the country illegally and otherwise, that is also a form of illegal entry into our country.
Mm-hmm. So the migrants coming in, we can all agree that it's not legal, and it's in many cases can be a problem. But the issue here is humanity.
Sure.
So at what point, even though, and Tom, I'll go back to you, even though these people are breaking the law and crossing the water and coming in, what is the issue with giving them water or helping them out of a situation? Does that not seem inhumane to you?
Well, sure. I think that we ought to treat everybody humanely. I spent 22 years in the Army. I'm very familiar with the Geneva's Convention and
All right, how about you answer that? We'll wait and see if we can get Tom to unfreeze. So the issue is humanity.
Sure.
So we have to stop illegal acts, but we can treat them better in the process.
Absolutely. And I think going to these measures is inhumane, and the idea that people would lose their lives simply trying to seek a better life seems un-American to me.
Mm-hmm. It does. Do we have Tom back? Okay, Tom is still frozen. So, what are your thoughts? What can a person do? Like they said, a woman was caught in the wire having a miscarriage. You see
Sure.
people with stitches and whatnot. Do they have any legal action that they can take against the United States for those things happening during that crossing?
I don't believe so. And unfortunately, it's very difficult for persons who don't have status to even get medical care. Emergency aid is available to anyone, but I have known persons without documentation who have needed medical care who rely on free services and often incomplete services. So unfortunately, the idea is that all these services are available. The people who come here without legal recourse often have to stay in the shadows, and they forego getting medical treatment, they forego getting services, and oftentimes it leads to lots of difficulty.
What do you think would be the best way for, I guess, there's desperation.
Sure.
They're not coming just
Yes.
to come. They're seeking a better life.
Yes.
So that people, I guess, the country can be more welcoming of those people coming in emergency situations if they're
Sure.
running from the cartel even.
Sure, and I think there are ways. There is such a thing called humanitarian parole, and thousands of people can ask the government if they have a true emergency. And lots of times, people are given permission to see a dying relative or if they need emergency surgery. We are a very compassionate nation. And when presented those stories, we often allow people to come in. But for those who are desperate for humanitarian or for a job, I think we need a more robust guest worker program. If the United States, we do have a labor shortage, and there are millions of workers who would love to help us do jobs that Americans are unable to fill. If we could have a more robust program to allow persons who truly just want to work to come here legally, to know that they will be hired legally, that they'll get a fair wage, and they'll be able to help their family, and then go home. To me, that's a much more humane solution, and that would solve, I think, a lot of the problem we see. because people are coming knowing they can get illegal jobs. If we provided a more robust way to provide a guest worker program, I think we could solve a big part of the problem.
Yeah. Well, it sounds good. I know it would take a whole lot, but we'll see what happens. We are going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. Stay with us.
I don't know if there's been a better time to start a brand new news operation.
The newsroom was pretty much starting from scratch.
It's fresh, it's innovative.
Lots of energy, lots of passionate reporters.
Knowing what we're starting here puts so much joy in my heart.
We have reporters who are embedded in these communities.
Many people throughout St. Clair Shores have been fighting to save this water tower. If there's a miracle out there, get a hold of me.
We are part of the neighborhood. Our newsroom is part of your neighborhood.
Residents here on Stansbury say they are fed up with all this flooding that keeps happening.
Because look, it was like to the middle of the block. Now it's coming all the way to the end of the block.
We shouldn't have to live like this.
Telling the stories that otherwise nobody would know about.
Now, AJ, you went to the downtown boxing gym and you really got to see how this gym is impacting kids' lives.
Yeah, Chris, as soon as I walked in the building, it was very uplifting.
It's a boxing gym, but it's more than boxing. You know, we do homework. We help them with the SAT.
When it comes to the weather, it's forecasting what's going to fall on your driveway, when is it going to happen, and how might it actually affect your day-to-day life.
Hundreds of people continue to call in reporting problems throughout the county.
Cleanup crews working all throughout Metro Detroit.
Get them down and get them cleaned up.
Local news to me means we're in your community, we're telling stories that matter to you, that affect you, that maybe we can get change and things done in your community.
Well, we're rethinking the way local news is done in the 21st century and how to tell the most important stories in a compelling way.
Local news is all about letting people know what's happening in their community.
I think we're here to listen and actually hear what you're saying, and we're putting together a newscast that will show that.
I want to tell those people's stories because it's needed. Detroit is ready. Get ready because here we come.
Reporting in Dearborn Heights.
Live in Wayne County.
Reporting in Adrian.
Live in Livonia.
Reporting from South Lyon, Kelly Vaughn.
CBS News Detroit.
Welcome back. A story now of a little girl who became the first migrant child to die in the custody of the U.S. Border Patrol during the Biden administration. 8-year-old Anadith Reyes Alvarez died back in May. U.S. Customs and Border Protection is now investigating her death, and for the first time, the agency admits to CBS News that the system failed to protect the little girl. Her parents say they believe their pleas for help were ignored because they are Black. They met with Layli Luciano in New York City, where they continue to seek asylum.
Si hubieran llamado a la ambulancia antes, yo sé que mi hija estuviera aquí conmigo.
If they had called the ambulance sooner, you know your daughter would be here.
Mabel Alvarez says she lost count of the times she begged for an ambulance to take her 8-year-old daughter, Anadith, to the hospital over multiple days.
Cuando ellos quisieron llamar a la ambulancia,
when they finally wanted to call the ambulance took about 5 minutes. That's when I realized how close the hospital was to us and that they could have done something.
The family, originally from Honduras, migrated to Panama, where Anadith was born. Mabel and her husband Russell say their situation there became unlivable and felt forced to migrate north. They took a 5-month journey across Mexico. Russell says they were trying to avoid all dangers along the way to keep their 3 children happy and safe.
The day we were crossing the river, she grabbed my hand happy. Daddy, Daddy, let's go. Let's go to Grandma. She's going to buy me a doll.
He says when they crossed the border into Brownsville, Texas, they thought they were finally somewhere safe.
The problem was crossing and being in Texas. The Border Patrol there was our nightmare.
The 5 went to a U.S. detention center in Donna, Texas, where Anadith got sick and tested positive for the flu. They were then moved to a Border Patrol station in Harlingen, Texas for isolation.
There were other sick kids there, and very cold, so that made her get worse.
Preliminary U.S. Customs and Border Protection findings confirmed that the family repeatedly requested medical attention, including an ambulance for Anadit, who suffered from sickle cell anemia and had a heart condition. Mabel says she had the paperwork to prove her daughter's medical issues and showed them to officials.
Él se paró enfrente de mi hija y le dijo,
A patrol agent didn't believe me. He stood in front of my daughter and told her, "Tell me how you can't breathe, because a girl that can't breathe would be passing out, and you're not passing out, you're fine," he told my daughter.
y mi hija le dijo, yo
And my daughter said, "I'm getting a little strength just to explain I can't breathe, not in my mouth nor my nose." And he told her, "You're fine."
The preliminary findings also found the family requested medical attention at least 9 times. A nurse contractor denied at least 3 requests to call an ambulance and also didn't properly record medical visits. And the cameras at the facility were not working. It also found officials failed to consult an on-call pediatrician. The day Anadit died, Mabel says she knocked on the infirmary's door many times.
me decían que no.
They told me no. They wouldn't call an ambulance until she passed out, not before.
The last time Mabel went to seek medical help for her daughter, she was turned away. And before getting back to her cell, Anadit had a seizure and collapsed. Russell saw it all happen.
I looked at my daughter and I said to myself, my daughter is saying, "Daddy, I can't go on. They killed me. I can't go on."
The look in her eyes.
She just looked at me and she was gone.
She was sick and I told her, "Baby, there's your daddy. Look at him."
Y los doctores me estaban viendo.
The doctors were looking at me and said, "What happened?" I told them, "You've already killed my daughter."
A CBP official concedes the system failed her, saying, quote, "There were many parts of the system that did not function as designed to protect Anadit." That official says reforms are underway to ensure those errors don't occur again.
Ellos se sentían mejor que mí.
They felt superior to me, as though I'm black and you're white. I was discriminated the whole time.
Gerlin Joseph founded the Haitian Bridge Alliance, an organization focusing on helping people of African descent at the U.S.-Mexico border.
When it comes to black people, when it comes to little black girls and little black boys, it's not the same compassion.
This administration said that it would treat immigrants more humanely. Has it? Is it?
No. We hoped, we believed in that promise, but that hasn't been the case.
In response to prior allegations of racial discrimination, U.S. Customs and Border Protection has stated there's no room in the agency for discrimination or intolerance.
Es duro todavía para mí.
It's still difficult for me. I miss her at night. I remember her as a loving child.
Ella soñaba.
She dreamed of so many things. She had big dreams for herself.
Lilia Luciano, CBS News.
On Tuesday, an independent court-ordered review of all custodial conditions for children held in those facilities along the southern border cited Anadit's death as a preventable tragedy that raises, quote, profound concerns. Well, Kevin is still with us. And Kevin, we were talking a little bit while that package was going on. Black and brown migrants experience their own level of racism trying to get in versus the rest, right?
That's true. And many saw that when Ukrainians were coming across the southern border that they were treated in a way much different than black and brown immigrants, and that seemed undeniable.
Yeah.
And it still happens. I mean, racism is real, and oftentimes dark-skinned immigrants are treated a little differently than those of lighter skin.
So why do you think then, in this situation, if the girl is visibly sick, that they would still just push her off like that?
Again, it seems so inhuman that I can't imagine any medical professional doing that. I mean, I wasn't there, but clearly it did happen, and it's a terrible tragedy.
Yeah.
And I hope if anyone is responsible and was negligent or criminally active, that person should be prosecuted.
Do you have any idea about how many people are in these facilities on any given day that maybe have crossed over?
Gosh, I think on the southern border there's 20 to 30,000 people in these facilities, so it's a large number of people.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So, and so then one would think that they would be equipped to handle situations like that.
And I think that's right. And while I'm not making, again, I'm not here to praise the Biden administration, but one tragedy is a terrible tragedy and is one too many. If we were hearing about dozens of similar stories, it would be far more alarming. But these things can happen and they should never happen.
No. So what could a person do in that situation? Because I'm assuming once you're in there, you can't now just leave and go walk through Texas. So what could they have done?
Sure. So, you know, along the southern border, there are some very heroic legal professionals and others who visit these facilities, who go there. There are church groups that minister there. So there are a significant number of Americans who are aware of the conditions these people are living in and are working hard to do it. And that is something I applaud every day.
Yeah. How can people at home help?
So lots of things. For one, again, if you're part of a faith community that has a border ministry, that would be a good place to start. I know many of our churches do in fact do that. And if you're interested, find out through your denomination or church, and that would be a good place to start.
Yeah. Oh, God. It's a scary situation and sad because even though this one was highlighted in this story, I recall hearing about more, as I'm sure you've heard more throughout your career.
Sure. I mean, we hear these stories all the time. And again, it highlights the desperation. People don't leave their homes and go through this dangerous journey and encounter all of these roadblocks because their life is so wonderful. And again, the attraction of the United States, we are a beacon of liberty and hope. And people just come here because they want that. Mm-hmm. And who could blame them?
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much. That was a tough one, so I appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.